At the beginning of the film, a young, pretty girl around the age of 10 is seen. Her name is Sophie and she used to live in an orphanage because both of her parents had passed away. Sophie struggled with sleep disorders and would often wake up during the night. As a result, she would often wander the orphanage during the night, end quote, because she had sleep disorder throughout the night. She had also a fear like the other kids. There is an old man who appears in the darkness. And he abducts the children. After this, he eats these children after killing them. One night when all are sleeping, she hears a cat and #039's meow. She was facing the sleep disorder so she goes to check it outside. When she is on the balcony, she checks if any cats have knocked over the trash cans. Suddenly, she notices that a giant and #039's hand sets the trash bin on its place, appearing from the back of the building. Afterwards, a gigantic giant appears from the backside of the building. End quote, Sophie end quote, had witnessed that giant. And it had also viewed her. She is scared, seeing it. And she immediately moves to her bed. But that giant captures end quote, Sophie end quote, putting its hand in the window. And it takes her away with it. It is seen, this giant used to keep itself hidden from the human beings. If any human being used to appear before it, it used to cover itself in some way. And then it sneaks out from there. Then it steps into another world, taking end quote, Sophie end quote. And it was the end quote, giants and #039, world end quote. It means that only giants lived there. End quote, Sophie end quote, notices that, it is grand house. And everything of that house was gigantic in size like the giants. End quote, Sophie end quote, attempts to escape from there. Giant says to her, there is no way to escape. So you cannot go anywhere from here. Hearing the noise, she becomes frightened and notices that it is an old giant. It says to end quote, Sophie end quote, while putting her on the frying pan, I am feeling much appetite. I am feeling appetite which is not being controlled by me. End quote, Sophie end quote, was thinking, this giant is going to victimize me. She also hears the laughing sounds of other giants there. So she asks that aged giants, are there also other giants? Aged giant says on it, yeah. There are also other giants. And those all giants are cannibals as they eat the raw flesh of human beings. Because they don and #039, take pity on any human being. And their captured person is engulfed by them. Knowing it, end quote, Sophie end quote, is more frightened. So she asks aged giant, will you also eat me? That aged giant tells on it, no. I don and #039, eat the human beings. Because I am vegetarian giant, not the man-eater. And this giant only takes the vegetable which was flavorless. In spite of this, he does not want to eat the human beings. It indicates that it is a sympathetic and kid-hearted giant. She asks the aged giant, why have you brought me here if you don and #039, eat the human beings? The aged giant tells that you had seen me. You could tell to someone there about me, and my life might be in danger in this way. Knowing about us, human beings reach here. And they also put to end the other giants. And it is the cause that I had to bring you here. Now you will spend the whole span of your life with me here. End quote, Sophie end quote, says on it, no. I will flee. The aged giant says, no. Never take a risk to run away. Otherwise, the giants which are outside will not take pity on you. Saying it, that aged giant places end quote, Sophie end quote, on a board. And it says to her, have rest for some time. But end quote, Sophie end quote, used to suffer the sleep disorders. Then she notices that giant is taking out the big bottles from its bag. There was something in those bottles which was sparkling. She asks the giants, what is in these bottles? The giant tells, there are end quote, dreams end quote, in it. She says on it, oh. Then these are not of my use. Because I dawn and hashtag 039, dream. And how can I dream? Because I suffer the sleep disorder. Then that giant starts reading that book which was in Sophie and hashtag 039's possession. There were many written stories in this book. The elderly giant begins to read the stories that are causing Sophie to sleep. After this, that aged giant takes a bottle. And it takes the dreams out of the bottle. Meanwhile, Sophie wakes up. She notices that giant is sleeping yet. Getting the benefit of it, she escapes outside from that house. She tries to run away. But she is captured by a huge giant. And that giant was in fact bigger than that aged giant. Sophie requests to that giant, "Let me go from here." But that giant does not care Sophie and it engulfs her. Sophie wakes up exactly after this. It means that Sophie was having a nightmare. Sophie wakes up and asks the giant, and hashtag 039, "It was you who did it, wasn't?" and hashtag 039, it? And hashtag 039, "I can," and hashtag 039, sleep or dream anymore, and hashtag 039, she says, "But the dream you showed me was a nightmare." The giant replies, and hashtag 039, "I had to do it," and hashtag 039, "I did so to inform you how much risk is wandering outside for you. So it will be better for you to stay here." The aged giant explains to Sophie "The presented giant here are bigger in size than me. And I am trivial before those giants. Because I am a small giant and also aged one." A huge giant comes inside as they were still conversing with each other. And it was truly bigger than that aged giant. That giant asks the aged giant while coming that, "Pygmy. With whom were you talking?" Here all giants used to call the aged giant, Pygmy because it was smallest in size than others. The aged giant replies them, "No. I was talking with none." Meanwhile, Sophie also hides somewhere. That bigger giant and hashtag 039's hand was wounded, so it had come to the aged man for dressing. As being cannibal, that giant senses the smell of human being in that house. So he begins to check the place things there. Then Sophie moves into that vegetable which aged man used to eat. Smelling that vegetable. So it has to agree with Sophie unwillingly. So it brings her again into the world of the giants. Where the rest of the giants were already waiting for them. Because all giants had come to know that aged giant has any human being. So all giants were curious to know, who is that human being? Where is that human? So they discover the house of the big friendly giant smelling the blanket. And they bring about the breakage of the house belongings. But the big friendly giant burns that blanket, having the smell of Sophie Then it asks all giants to leave its house. Sophie notices the hanging photo on the wall. It was the photo of a queen. Sophie hits upon a plan, noticing that photo. She asks the big friendly giant to make a dream for the queen. And expose in that dream that there is world of giants in the same universe. And those giants are too dangerous which eat all kids, killing them. And you may also bring both of us in that dream. So the queen may recognize us if we go before them. Hearing it, the big friendly giant does the same. And he creates a dream of all giants, living in the giants and hashtag 039 world. And it also includes himself and Sophie into this dream. And it also includes the other missing kids of the city. Then they move nearby the palace of the queen. And they transfer the dreams into sleeping queen. And the queen dreams what they wanted to show to her. Waking up, the queen is scared because it was a nightmare. Because giants were eating the children. The queen shares her dream to her attendant.
Her attendant consoles her saying, "Don and hashtag 039, worry. It was just your nightmare." She says, reading the newspaper, a strange happening has occurred. Because many kids had been lost from their house last night. It happens the same as you have dreamt. Then the queen says, "Withdraw the curtains." End quote. Sophie end quote, stood near the windowsill as the curtains were drawn back. They had actually made it the part of the dream. And they had also included end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, there. End quote. Sophie end quote, tells them about end quote, the big friendly giant end quote. She also takes the words of Queen saying, "Promise me that you will not harm to end quote, the big friendly giant end quote." Then end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, appears before the queen and bends it down with etiquette. Then the queen also fulfills her promise. There was also ridiculous fact about the giants here. They were unable to pronounce the correct word. So it used to call something else than the queen. End quote, the big friendly giant end quote, was unable to utter the word human being correctly. They used to utter the jumbled out words. Afterwards, the queen greets them warmly. And she also offers them an excellent feast. Then they reveal everything to the queen. There are two bigger giants in the giant and hashtag 039's world, which eat the kids and human beings, catching them. So the queen gets ready to help them. And she prepares her complete military. With the help of end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, they move to the giant and hashtag 039's world, getting in the helicopters. Now they had planned here properly. So they stop at a place according to a plan.
Because they had arrived there to assault them with full preparation. The plan included that end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, will create a dream. And end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, will include the repentance and guilt in these dreams. For their bad deeds which were committed by them. And end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, also creates such a dream. As end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, goes to deliver that dream to those giants, then it remembers that I have forgotten the tool of delivering the dream into the palace of the queen. And it was dangerous to do it without that thing. Because it had to go to those giants. But end quote, Sophie end quote, courageously takes that dream jar to the place of sleeping giants. The leader of those giants wakes up before end quote, Sophie end quote, was able to break this jar. End quote, Sophie end quote, breaks that jar as it is going to grab her. And that dream is delivered to the sleeping giants. Waking up, those giants feel guilt on their bad doings. But the giant leader was waking up. So it does not feel any repentance or guilt. So it attacks end quote, Sophie end quote. But end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, appears before that giant. That giant catches it in its hand because of big friendly giant and hashtag 039's small size. As it begin to kill end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, the queen and hashtag 039's armed military reaches there in the helicopter. And they take all giants with them, seizing them. And they are left on an island amid of the sea. Now there was water in their surroundings and they used to fear the water. So they could not escape from there. So they have been entrapped here for lifetime. The queen throws the seeds of food stuff there for those giants. So these giants may grow the vegetables, using those seeds. And they eat that vegetable for the lifetime. Now those giants had disliking for this vegetable but they had to eat it reluctantly. And they have to eat this vegetable, living on this island forever. After this, end quote, Sophie end quote, is shown who does not stay in the orphanage, but she lives in the palace of the queen. End quote, Sophie end quote, is very pleased here. And she can also contact with end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, at any time. Because end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, had told that it can hear each sound of this universe. On the other side, end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, who have left alone in the giants and hashtag 039 world, who have grown many other vegetables in the giants and hashtag 039, world besides that meadow. And it is also contented in its life. End quote. Sophie end quote, comes to the windowsill daily and says end quote, good morning end quote, to BFG. Hearing it, end quote, the big friendly giant end quote, replies it. And this fabulous movie completes here.